Why do the richest people in the world all have homeopaths? You know, they could afford any medicine on earth and they're choosing homeopathy. There's something to this. My sister was really sick. If you cure my sister's chronic condition, I will change my degree next week. He gave her medicine. The healing started almost immediately. And I just thought, what on earth is this? Every single person on earth has a unique sort of vibration going on. And you can marry up the distortion of energy in someone's body to the correct remedy. That's when all of the healing occurs.
Do you think that there's a role for homeopathy in helping people perhaps tap into deeper layers of themselves?
When people are wanting to go next level with their dreams and goals, I would be looking at...
Today's guest is a trailblazer in the world of homeopathy and holistic health, leading a movement that's empowering people to take control of their well-being in a whole new way. As the founder of Remedy Collective and education platform Remedy Academy, she's making homeopathy more accessible with record-breaking global enrollment numbers in her courses. But her journey goes far beyond business. If there was ever the perfect person to talk about alignment, becoming an energetic match for your dreams and desires, and boldly stepping into your purpose, look no further. And if after our conversation today, you can't wait to stock up on your own remedies, I've got a cheeky discount code waiting for you at the end. Melissa Kupsch, welcome to Not So Status Quo.
Thank you. I'm so excited to do this. I haven't seen you in, how many years would it be since we would have seen each other? School?
Many years. Yeah. So Melissa and I went to high school together, and our school was really, really large. There was hundreds of kids per grade. So we knew each other. We didn't hang out that much, but I've been following your journey post high school. And honestly, what an incredible woman you are, and just so interesting. So I was like, I have to get you on to this podcast. There's no doubt.
I love it. I love it.
So let's start at the beginning. Tell me about your young self. What were you interested in? What were you passionate about?
So if we go like young, it was always a vet. You know, anyone asked me up to the age of 10, probably I wanted to be a vet. I wanted to have a farm with all these animals. Is that like an every child thing, all young girls, or is that just a me thing?
No, I think it's a zoologist. So I feel like,
it's a kid thing. Yeah. But as I got older, when I was in high school, you know, when we had to fill out those forms of sort of what we prospectively are looking to do, definitely mine was around sort of like health, whether it was massage. I was interested in that holistic sphere. So my dad's a doctor, my mum's a hippie. And so if you sort of go in the middle somewhere, that's where I sort of sat, always curious about the human body, and loved that natural side of it. I always found that really like just sort of whimsical to me as a kid. And, but when I actually graduated, I really got this, like, I really want to travel. And so the first degree that I actually was in was to be a pilot, of all things. Because I thought, if I am going to travel, I just want to be paid for it, right? So I did that. But in my second year, it really just became clear to me that my favorite subjects in that degree were around aviation, biology, and medicine, which is, you know, looking at the diseases that pilots are really prone to, you know, cataracts and stuff like that. And I just thought, this is the one that like lights me up, and I think I'm in the wrong profession. So I went from there straight into natural health, and ultimately found my way to homeopathy, something that I had never heard of before, was very intrigued by, very skeptical of, and long story short, once it proved itself to me to be this whole system of medicine, I just have become passionately fanatic for the last, 10 years. And so it's just grown and grown. But yeah, that was sort of the evolution of it.
Wow. I also can understand why homeopathy just grabbed you and pulled you in, because admittedly, not knowing much about homeopathy until probably mid last year, I was like, oh, okay, this is another natural. I'm all for natural medicine and natural healing, the body healing itself. And then when I started listening to you and following, your teachings, I was like, gosh, there's a lot of compelling evidence. But it is a bit of a scrutinized area of medicine still, for now, hopefully for now. How did you feel about stepping into an area that was so heavily scrutinized?
So my introduction to homeopathy was that my sister was really sick. She was in and out of hospital from the time we were, I'm 1 year older than her, 12 months exactly. And so from the age of 16 to maybe 20, 21, she was in and out of hospital every couple of months. And though we had tried all of the holistic therapies that we knew of at that point, I was 2 years into a naturopathic degree to be a naturopath. And she'd done everything that you can imagine holistic health holds. Grounding, meditation, naturopathy, Chinese herbs, acupuncture, like literally everything. Plus she had done all of the medical route. And at 21, she was so sick. They said to her, the doctors said, you really need to be on an antibiotic every day prophylactically for the rest of your life. And it was just like, that's just not viable, So we were desperate to find something else. And I was at uni that day and I had a lecturer say to me, oh, you'd love homeopathy. You should study homeopathy. And he'd said that a couple of times. And just in that moment, I said, right, that's it. If you cure my sister's chronic condition, I will change my degree next week. And he said, okay, cool. When can she meet with me? And so we met in a coffee shop and he took her case for about 90 minutes. He asked her everything about her chronic disease, her emotions, her childhood. He wanted to get a whole picture because as you'll find in homeopathy, the mind, the body, the spirit, physically, mentally, and emotionally, we are completely integrated. So we cannot talk about health. We cannot talk about physical health without understanding our mental health. It's critical and where we've come from, as children growing up. And so he gave her medicine. It was like a little bottle of medicine. And he said, take 2 drops of this under your tongue every morning and every night. And I was like, what? I was like, she is so sick and you are giving her 2 drops in the morning and the night. And I was like, right, whatever. And we go through and long story short, like the healing started almost immediately, physically getting discharges out of her body and she didn't get that same symptom again. So she wasn't being hospitalized anymore. And I was shocked. I was like, what have I just witnessed? And, the science type brain, goes that's just not possible, So I was still skeptical. And so I said to him, right, I'm not completely convinced because maybe that was a fluke or a placebo. Now you can treat me. And if it goes well for me, then I'll change my degree. And so I met with him again, same coffee shop, 90 minutes. I told him everything about me and he gave me the remedies, 2 drops morning and night. And what happened for me was profound, physically, mentally, and emotionally. And I wouldn't have said that I was sick before going to see him. I was robust and I was well. And even with that, massive return of old symptoms, healing, cleansing, purging emotionally. And I just thought, what on earth is this? Like, what is happening here? So from there, I went to the library. I went to the College of Natural Medicine, Endeavour College, and I just got out every book on homeopathy that they had. And I just read and read and read, and it just made to me complete sense. I felt like I had found the Holy Grail. It was like, this is how medicine was meant to be practiced. And, from there, I found the history of homeopathy, which is so illuminating, in Australia and across the US. A lot of people don't realize that we had homeopathic hospitals set up that used to look after the sick, and they had thousands of beds in these hospitals. Now, they used only homeopathic medicine to heal people. So homeopathy is not some new thing. Homeopathy is something that was outrageously successful, popular. But when we introduced petrochemical drugs, and we all know what, comes into play with the pharmaceutical industry, it was a little bit too competitive. There wasn't room for both. You can't have one system that's dependent on sick people, and you can't have another system that aims to really heal them completely. So that's where we're at. But I think what's interesting is we're seeing a massive surge in popularity of homeopathy right now. And I think it's because people have realized the shortcomings of the other system, and now they want true deep healing. So
I would agree that I've seen that there is a bigger shift towards even just more wholesome and community-based living, especially in Western society cultures who typically it's more individualistic, and seeing that almost like a collective pull towards growing your own foods and crops and really trying to self-heal. So that's understandable. Um, Also, incredible story. Like I've heard your story a couple of times and about your sister, and I just thought seeing is believing. And honestly, what more evidence would you need to really show you that there's really some validity here?
Yeah. And I mean, for myself physically, when I took my medicine, I historically, throughout school, I would get a cold sore, once every month or every second month. So like reasonably regularly.
Yeah.
And when I took that medicine that night, I went to bed and I didn't know what to expect, from homeopathy. Because like I said, I was like, I'm well. I don't know what this medicine's going to do, but let's just see if it does anything. And I woke up that next morning and I had a mouth covered in cold sores. And what happened is that my body pushed that viral load right out onto the external. So all of them were here, and I have never had a cold sore since then. And so the power, to get to the root and push things out, it's just phenomenal. So yes, seeing is believing. I see it with a lot of my patients who are sick and they sort of think like, oh, this is normal, or, you've got something, you've got it for life. But the body is miraculous at self-healing if it's given the right stimulation. And that's where homeopathy comes in.
Wow. Did you find anything else changed about your sense of self or your identity or energetically? What shifted for you?
So emotionally, when we were doing the consult, the homeopath's name's Peter, so now he works with me, but Peter asked me, okay, what would have been the most stressful things that you've ever been through? And I said to him, well, truthfully, I've had like a really good life. There's no big significant traumas that I can think of, but my parents divorcing when I was young, that would probably be the thing that's caused me the most stress. Going between houses, having parents who don't like each other. I was like, I reckon I took on a lot of that, and that was very stressful as a young child. But, as an adult, I get on so well with both of them that I didn't think that there was any issue. It's like I hold no grudges like against anything, and they're fine, now. So when I took that medicine, what was extremely fascinating is that night I go home from uni and I live with my mum and my siblings. At that time, I'm 22 years old. And something innocent is said at the dinner table and it just pours out of me. I'm not joking. It's like verbal vomit of, and I burst into tears and I say to my mum, something like, oh, you never cared about me. You never like looked after me. And the whole table's like shocked because it's really quite come out of nowhere. And I leave the table and I go down to my room and I'm just sobbing. And it's like so out of character for me. I wouldn't say that I'm overly expressive with emotion. So my mum's come downstairs and she's like, are you all right? Like, what on earth is going on? Like, where is this coming from? And I just like, I'm going and I'm saying, do you remember the time? And you were meant to drop me at dad's house and you did this. And I'm just bringing up this old stuff. And, we get through that and she's like, do you want a hug? Are you okay? And then I'm like, yeah, I'm okay. And she just apologizes. She says, I'm so sorry. I never realized how much it hurt you. And then she says, do you want to come up for dinner? I'm like, yeah, okay. And it was completely over then. By that point, my little emotional purging was fine. I'm up there then eating dinner like normal. And I didn't think at the time how bizarre that was. It just was what it was. I didn't realize until I spoke to Peter the next day and he said, well, that's a common thing with homeopathic medicine because your vital force, the energy that flows through your body, your human spirit, it can hold on to these spiritual wounds, these like emotional traumas. And through the right stimulation, the body goes, we can't hold these emotions in here anymore. That grief is toxic. Get it out. And so it gets it out the only way it knows how, by crying, by saying the things out loud. And so that would happen with probably 80% of the patients that I work with, that they take a remedy and they have a big emotional purging, because we've all been through such unique circumstances in our life. You know, for me, it was my parents divorcing. That was really rough. Some people, it's a really bad breakup that just shocked them to their core, and they've never quite gotten over that shock. For some people, they were really dominated and made to feel small and like they've got to be, you know, so hidden in a box. You know, a lot of people have got what we would call ailments from suppression. They grew up in a house maybe with a dominating parent. They never got to be who they want to be. And as we grow older, you see this in women, this chronic people pleasing, this perfectionism, and we're trying to compensate for the smallest that we feel inside, but it's extremely toxic, and we end up with chronic diseases. Our body can't cope with that level of, you know, toxic emotion. So it's extremely powerful in that sphere. And I think that's what I find so many people in this generation are seeking. They want real freedom in their soul. They want peace, and it can be hard to find, but they're seeking it. But homeopathy is the biggest tool that I have ever found for recalibrating all of that, letting go of the traumas and just being able to thrive.
What I find also really interesting about homeopathy, because energy is something that I do with my clients as well. Energy, you work with, particularly with the body, also with the spirit, but there's a lot of crossover between homeopathy and mindset work and self-concept. But what I find really interesting as well, I've heard you speak about, I think they're called miasms, or are they where you've generational things? And I just find that the passing of energy and that ancestral energy coming through so interesting as well. I completely believe that to be the case. And even just hearing you speak about one in particular, I was like, you have described me to a T. How could you possibly, you know, and all of it was the carcinosin, I think.
Yep.
And it was like the cancer, you know, my mum just had breast cancer surgery last week. We don't have that in our family. We have all different types of cancers. And it was, you were saying about how uh, typically the child would have recurring tonsillitis. I did. They have thyroid issues. I do. I have autoimmune in both sides of my family. So my GP, who's really good at balancing natural and Western medicine, he's like, you're my autoimmune girl who just doesn't have one yet, but has all the markers. And it's like, bam, 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 bam. So it's fascinating when you think about your family lineage as well, and the different issues that have persisted through the generations and how they manifest now in you.
And I think it's critical that, you know, as a population, we come to understand the nature of the miasms, because a lot of the time it's touted like, okay, just eat well and exercise and you will be well. And that is just not true. Energy that circulates through the body. When you imagine the sperm at the moment of conception, it reaches the egg. Mum and dad have contributed a lot of energetic material. That energy, that blast of light under a microscope, when the soul enters this little embryo, you then go forward to grow this body, right? But it's energy that actually dictates how it grows and what influence, you know, it's going to have on that. And so, you know, it's unfair for people to think that, you know, you've just got to, you know, do these basic lifestyle things and you'll be well, because we are absolutely under the influence of the energy of our ancestors. As inconvenient, as unfair as that might seem for some lineages, that is the truth, but we do have power to change it. But it's like we want to address that as soon as possible before the pathologies really get going, right? Before the cancer forms, before they get glandular fever, like really boost them up. But yeah, and you also look at the mental and emotional aspects that come through as well. Like I've worked with children who they might be 8 years old and they have got the deepest, darkest depression. You know, it's like the world is on their shoulders, and you look in the family backstory and you can see the miasmatic influence that's at play. And you think, these poor kids, you know, trying to live under the weight of that. And so all things that flow from that as well. When we look at addictions, you know, drug, alcohol addiction, these miasms play into the ways that we adapt, the way that we cope with these heavy, heavy feelings. And yeah, they're powerful, but things that we really need to address. And what's beautiful, I guess, about the way the world is going is that we are in quite a health crisis. Most of us know it, right? You look around us, we're either anxious, depressed, chronically sick. A lot of us are on pharmaceuticals, like where we've got issues going on, and our kids, they're more sensitive than ever. You ask the teachers at school, 1 in 7 little boys is now said to be medicated. And we've just got full blown things going on. And so, yeah, we just really need to work on bringing them back into alignment. But I think as a generation, we're feeling motivated to do that because we're saying we just cannot go any further along this line. Like our fertility is in tatters. What's going on? You know, something's got to give here. So it's kind of a beautiful trajectory we're on because I think we'll see a massive swing back.
I hope so too. I feel like that will be the case, but fingers crossed. So you finished your studies, you completed your homeopathy degree, you then went into private practice, or what came after that?
Yeah, so I started my private practice working in fertility and I loved it. You know, I loved it so much. People in their most vulnerable states, and homeopathy is so successful in that sphere. So I felt extremely blessed to be a part of so many miracles of people who sometimes have done 11 rounds of IVF with no success, and then they within 6 months have a baby with homeopathy on the way, and it's just life-changing. So I went into fertility first, and then I opened up to treating all things. And I loved that too. I loved logging on for an appointment and not knowing what I was going to see. You know, was it a woman coming in postpartum burnout? Was it a gentleman with, you know, traumas from his childhood that he wanted to let go of, or whatever it was? I loved the nature of not knowing and just seeing into people's worlds. You know, as a homeopath, it's so beautiful because you pretty much are asking them, you know, tell me your story. Tell me from the moment you were born what it's been like to be you. How did you feel as a child? What went on? You want to know about their mindset. Like you said, you know, how much this intertwines with mindset. I want to know what you were sort of raised with. Do you have this lack mindset? Is there a lot of grief going on? You know, what's blocking you from living your best life? Because a lot of the time, these are vibrational loops. Of course, we know that life is life, right? And things happen. And the beauty of things happening is that we grow through them. You know, we need some resistance in our lives to grow. How boring it would be if life was fine and dandy every single day. We just don't grow like that. But at the same time, there are people who are experiencing these recurrent issues. And I'll give you an example of some. Some might be every relationship I get into, I get cheated on, or he's really crap. And it's just over and over and over again. Or, you know, people with finances, like I never have enough money. Even if I get money that comes in, I always lose it and I'm always left with nothing. Those, you know, sorts of loops that just go round and round. And so I'll tell you a story for myself personally where I came to see a loop in my life. And I noticed it when I was studying homeopathy, and it's sort of what brought it to my attention of like, oh yeah. But from the moment that I was maybe 16, 17, so I'd had a high school boyfriend at school for 2 years. That was great. Then we broke up around like 17 years old. But from then until maybe 23 years old, I was single the whole time, but not for not trying. All I wanted was to settle down and start a family, like as soon as possible. And what I found was that every person that I was interested in was not interested in me. And every person that was interested in me, I was like, oh, I just get like a funny vibe. And it got to the point, and this was just literally constant for that 6 or 7 years.
Wow.
And it was just like, it was wild. And, towards the end of it, there was this one person, who was sort of, I guess, on the scene, and he was really interested in one step down. And I was like, oh, and my mum said to me, like, he is the most beautiful person. Like, what's going on? Like, for you that you would not want. And I'm like, I really don't know. And I guess that was the thought when I look at it. I'm like, I actually think this is something that I'm creating. Now, my parents have not had good, strong relationships. They divorced when I was young. They've had multiple divorces since then. And so it always became a really key thing to me that, like, I never want to get divorced. I want to have a whole family. I want it to be happy. It became really important to me. So that fear of divorce in my subconscious was like pretty strong, set in good there. And as an extension of that, I also had come to believe about myself that I pretty much need to be perfect before I attract that person into my life, because I don't want to just be like bringing in anybody. Like, I really need to be like this, my best self, to then have someone come alongside me. It was when I was at uni and we were learning about this remedy in particular called lycopodium. And in lycopodium, they have such a fear of rejection that they will often, they won't be able to commit to anything. There oftentimes there'll be people who sort of like play the field because they're scared to settle down and commit, because they don't want to be rejected. They don't want it to go wrong. And I was like, ooh, sounds familiar. And even though the whole picture of the lycopodium didn't resonate with me, that aspect definitely did. And so I thought, I'm just going to take a dose. I was at uni. I was in the student clinic. I was like, why not? I'm going to take a dose. Yeah. Within 1 week, I had already gone on my first date with my now husband. And it was the quickest flowing thing. 9 months later, I was pregnant with our first child. It was like that vibration in me of the fear of rejection and that I need to be perfect, it completely dissolved. And I got to see it for what it was, because so many of us, we have these subconscious beliefs that we're not even aware of. We don't realize our point of attraction. We don't realize what it is. Where does this come from? And it just fully came up to the surface where I could see it. And it's like, wow, I've been holding myself back, waiting until I'm perfect. And it was that revelation. And I remember I felt it within my body, this revelation of, you don't need to be perfect to have like a nice husband. He's not going to be perfect. The people that you're interested in are never perfect. Why would you think that you need to be perfect? It's fine. Just like go live. And so, then I met Maddie, and it was smooth sailing. Maddie, of course, went to our school. I don't know if you knew Maddie at school. Do you know Maddie?
Yeah. We kind of knew each other. You know how you kind of know people,
Yes.
but yeah.
That's
so beautiful. When I saw you guys were together, I was like, that's so lovely. I wonder if they knew each other during school. But this story is even better because it shows that I often say to my clients, and for me, myself as well, there's so much power in shining a light on the things that are holding us back. So I completely agree with you. We often have no idea they're limiting beliefs, or not even necessarily limiting. Sometimes they're competing beliefs. Sometimes we want this, but we also want this, and it just keeps us stuck in the middle because it's like this push-pull and we don't actually move forward. But also the beliefs that we deeply hold about ourselves that we don't even realize. But the first step of even being able to recognize and shine a light on them is so powerful in itself. But then when you do, you then have that responsibility to actually then do something about it. And it sounds like you then went on to be like, okay, well, let's do something about this. And the remedy sounds like it was expedited everything.
It did the trick. And I guess the beauty of, when we're trying to look at our subconscious beliefs, one of the easiest ways is to like, well, look at the life that we've created. If your relationships are all really sucky, let's look at why. Like, where does that stem from? So many of us, it's in our formative years, up to the age of 7, or, you really want to look at what was going on at that time that would have set into our psyche, the little programs that we naturally absorb because our brain is just in that absorptive state. So whether it's, the financial issues, if someone says, oh, I don't know what my subconscious beliefs are about money. And it's like, well, let's like look at your life. How's that turning out? If you never have enough money, I want to know what was going on in your earlier life. What was your family life like? Where does this come from? Where's the root of the issue. And so when you find that, you can, shine a light on it.
So do you find that the way that someone perceives themselves determines the types of remedies that you would be drawn to prescribe to them?
Definitely. So that's probably, I think, the most important part is for me to understand inside their head, inside their mind, how they think. For example, we've got this remedy called silica. And for these women, they're often extremely self-conscious, and it's born out of like an I'm not good enough, I'm not smart enough, I'm not pretty enough. And so you'll see these women and they will overcompensate, things like they will want to be immaculate, like say, for example, all the time. And if they're not, they just feel constantly not good enough. Now, all of their insecurities usually face towards them. They can be like a little bit more shy, more timid, often get social anxiety when they're going out to events, stuff like that. And so it's like it's encompassing the whole person and how they think and feel about themselves. But when those people, you look at their sort of anxiety, right, which is often all directed inward, and like they'll leave a party and they'll be replaying with their husband like, oh, did you think it sounded all right when I said this? Or how do you think they interpreted that? And they just exhaust themselves with trying to understand how they come across. What do people think of me? So that's silica. But you compare that sort of anxiety to an arsenicum album. That's another remedy's anxiety. And an arsenicum album, they are all about, their anxieties are really the external world. So they try to control a lot of things. They might be that typical worrywart, always planning, got all these things going on. They might have a lot of health anxiety and fears around like getting sick, and they'll go to the doctor and they're anxious, but they're anxious about the outside world. And usually when you go into an arsenicum album's life story, something has happened in the earlier years that shocked and scared them, whether it was a neighbor got diagnosed with cancer and they were like, and it really hurt them, or maybe a parent had a heart attack or something. Usually it's within that vein. And so you completely understand why we are the way we are. It's the way that we adapt. And so, the different remedies come into play based on what that person is going through, what they've experienced. Yeah.
And do you think that people will energetically attract the things that they're fearing, or the beliefs that they hold about themselves, like as a, mental manifestation, but also a physical manifestation as well?
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. It's our point of vibration, whatever's going on. If you've got a deep rooted fear, we do tend to attract, or if it's not in our life, like you'll just be seeing it all around you. If you have an immense fear of cancer, for example, that can be an indicator, that things in the body would be potentially off that could lead to cancer. But also you might just have lots of people around you, because it's when you understand the nature of vibration, that we are emitting a constant energy and a signal out, and the universe, God, however you view it, it comes back at us, and it's for our own learning if we can overcome it. But it's in the overcoming, of course, that then we're set free. But until that point, often the universe will send you situation after situation. Okay, have we learned this lesson? Have we got this yet? Can we move on from this? You definitely can see an element of that.
I find this really interesting. Again, like this intersectionality between the work that we do is actually, it's really interesting to me. I wonder if a lot of the women that are coming to you, and the men, because we both see people of both genders. Well, you not so much now because you're not practicing, you don't have your clinic, but a lot of the women that are coming to me, they have this deep desire to connect with their authentic self. They feel like they have lost her at some point along the way, or they're just not sure who that person is anymore. What do you see the role of homeopathy being in helping someone reconnect with their authentic self? And you and I might have slightly differing views on what authentic self is, because you probably look at it maybe more from a physical, the physical side as well as the energetics. So can you talk me through the role of, homeopathy with authentic self?
So I guess the question is like, who are we really without all of the layers that we've put on top? That's one thing. So with homeopathy, you'd want to clear the layers, clear the fears, clear the traumas, the heartbreak, the boyfriend who did this and that, and all of the things that we've come to believe, about ourselves from that perspective. So clearing all of that. But another thing that you see often in homeopathy, so the number one remedy that I see this in, where women will completely, like their identity, they step into who they really are, but it's actually carcinosin, that miasmatic remedy that you were talking about before. And the thing about our carcinosins is that they are often extremely hardworking. They're the chronic people pleasers. Yes, I'll do that. I can do that. They overextend. They often get chronic fatigue, like down the line, and other health issues. But the whole mental and emotional sphere is just, they do everything to keep everyone else happy. And of course, who on earth am I? Like, I don't know what I like. What are my hobbies? What am I good at? My gosh, I don't know. I've been a doormat for a long period of time, a lot of the time. And so, I mean, your carcinosins, in some ways, they're the perfect employees because they're meticulous. They'll never let you down. They're just go, 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 go. But at the same time, for their own health, that can be very damaging, that they aren't able to fully express themselves. Now, there's all different shades of these remedies. I'm giving like a generalization of, the mental and emotional that you can see, but you see all different sorts. Like, say, for example, even if the carcinosin miasm resonates with you, this other stuff might not at all, but you see it in a lot of patients. And when they take that remedy, the vital force is revitalized, and it's that sole purpose of, like, you're not doing what you came here to do. You can't stay in this soul destroying job any longer. And so they quit. Or if they were in a really toxic relationship, they will leave it. They'll just say, no, I'm not doing it anymore. Whereas, like, in the past, of course, they've just been people pleasing. Yes, I'll do that. I'll do that. I'll do that. And so when we are trying to find our authentic self, it's a soul thing that we need to come back to and remember who we are, what we came here to do, which for every single one of us is such a unique mission. Like, some people, they just have the most unique, like, art that they want to share with the world. And it's like, that's what they want to be pursuing for their own health. I encourage people just to find the thing that they love, and might take some, poking around for somebody who's not given themselves any time to explore any hobbies. But a lot of people under those layers, they do know what they secretly love. They've just not let themselves pursue it.
I completely agree. It's really lovely to see people liberated, to actually feel like they can explore parts of themselves that they have suppressed. And I do believe a lot of that comes down to, exactly like you said, those layers, the who we believe we are, how worthy we believe we are, how deserving. I don't know if you've had much to do with this, I guess, the level of mindset work in an isolated way. But do you think that there's a role for homeopathy in helping people perhaps tap into deeper layers of themselves that perhaps traditional mindset type work can't really get to?
For sure. And I mean, even when you talk about that, like, am I worthy of the level of success that I desire, right? In a lot of us, we actually hold a lot of, like, really negative ideas about ourselves and what we deserve. So that's a big one. Imposter syndrome is a big one. And there are remedies specifically. So if I look at, say, the remedy Thuya, brilliant remedy for all sorts of physical things. But in a mental and emotional side, they often hold this belief of, I'm not good enough. If anybody really knew me, if they really knew the true me, they wouldn't like me. And so they often mask up and they put on this show going out, but they're not their true, authentic, at their core self, because they fear that people won't really like them. And they hold a lot of self-loathing under the surface. Now, sometimes people are not aware to the extent that they actually hold these beliefs. It's not until they take the remedy and it comes pouring up into their conscious mind and they go, oh my gosh, yeah, that's right, because this happened when I was a child or something. And yeah, I've carried this self-loathing ever since then, you know, stuff like that. And so when people are wanting to go next level with their dreams and goals, I would be looking at any potential blocks that would stand in their way. Why do they not feel worthy of the fullness of what life is meant to be? I actually believe that if people can, you know, think it, what they would like, they can have everything. They can have a harmonious relationship. They can have good relationships with their kids. They can have good health. They can have financial success, any sort of success, whatever it is. Success to all of us looks different, but those mindset things I think are huge, because with homeopathy, because it clears out the vibration, it means that people don't have to muscle their way through it. You become this attractive magnet, and you'll see this with your patients and their follow-ups. They will get a call out of nowhere about this dream job, and you think, how on earth did that come so fast? Or in my case, single for 7 years. And then he just walks into my life immediately after. And it's because vibration underpins all of creation. Everything that God has built, vibration was at the core. It is at the core. And I mean, even mainstream science, with all of their developments with quantum physics, quantum entanglement, we know we're all connected. We've got this whole energetic soup going on. And so if you can heal your vibration, if you've got big goals that you want to tick off, the number one thing you want to focus on is your vibration, because you will become a magnet and it won't be hard for you to achieve it. So that I would definitely recommend people tap into. And, you know, a lot of the work that we can do with, you know, manifestation and just the power of the mind, like the power of the mind is huge. So if people were diligent with their creation, you know, sort of things, like whether it's journaling, you know, meditation, whatever it is, that will get people a very long way. That gets people a lot of healing and a lot of success and stuff like that. But if people find that there's still a block, that for some reason this one thing that I really want is not really coming into my life, that's when I look deeper and about where's the block, you know, what's the programming under here that you can't see. Yeah.
This is really exciting for me because the vibration side of things is something that I focused on with my clients quite a lot as well. And I actually had one of my former clients come on to the podcast a couple of weeks ago, and we were talking about how her life, once she decided that it was time to just hold a space for herself and call in what she was deeply desiring, within the 6-week program, she achieved goals she thought it would take her years within 5 weeks. And it was like, exactly like you said, these things were the phone call out of the blue. And what's really exciting about homeopathy and the crossover between mindset and mindset work and that our self-belief as well is that this is a potential added tool that we can use in our toolkits to just expedite the timeline between where we are now and what we truly desire. So I personally, from like a professional perspective and personal, because I need to link up with a homeopath ASAP, and I need to get into this because it's fascinating to me.
Yeah, no, for sure. And like with your client, it's like prayer is a vibration. Putting it out there and just claiming what we want, that is a vibration, you know, because obviously even our thoughts, and a lot of the time I would always recommend to people, it's got to be heart-centered. It's got to be felt, feeling your way into it, because there are people who they write down their affirmations and they might read it every morning. Okay, I'm going to be happy. I'm going to be successful. And it's the emotion. And so she's obviously surrendered to like, this is what I want. This is what I deserve. This is what I'm claiming. Thank you, God. It's mine. And vavum. And so that level of creation is all still vibration. Yeah.
So I'm conscious that we haven't actually spoken about, we've mentioned remedies and we've been obviously talking about homeopathy, but we haven't necessarily, for those who aren't so familiar with what the remedies are you able to step through at a high level what remedies are, how they're taken, and then potentially if there's any, whether you need to go to a homeopath for these or whether it's a self-medicating type thing, like lay the
Yeah.
land for us.
So homeopathy, it's obviously an energetic system of medicine. And what we do is, and homeopathy was born over 250 years ago by a medical physician who just saw the way they were practicing medicine at that time. He was like, oh my Lord, no. I mean, that was the era of heroic medicine, using mercury, bloodletting leeches. So of course he was like, I will not take part in that. But he founded homeopathy and it was miraculous. So from that point forward, homeopathy has followed through the ages. The British royal family, they have their own private homeopaths, and the Rockefeller family had their own private homeopaths. A lot of very rich people, they use homeopathy. And, the thing you'd want to be asking yourself when you are skeptical, like I was back in the day, is why do the richest people in the world all have homeopaths? They could afford any medicine on earth and they're choosing homeopathy. There's something to this. So what we do is we take from nature certain elements. So there's a lot of herbs and plants, in homeopathy. So you might go to the belladonna plant and you take some of that, you take it into the pharmacy and they make it into a homeopathic remedy. So they do this very specific and precise process. So they dilute it so that it's no longer toxic, but the energy of that belladonna plant is still encapsulated in the remedy. And that's what we are dosing with the body. Now, the body responds to the energy of that original stimulus. So they take it from all sorts, plants, minerals, and tissues, animals. And they're just minute, little minuscule amounts that they then make these remedies out of. Now, the human body, every single person on earth has a unique sort of vibration going on. And so when you can marry up the distortion of energy in someone's body to the correct remedy, that's when all of the healing occurs. If you were to take a remedy that did not resonate with you at all, it will actually do nothing. So this is the art of homeopathy. It has to be that you must mirror up to the body the exact vibration that it's currently in. Now, when you do that and you ingest homeopathy orally, when you do that, what you're doing is you're stimulating the field of the human body with the artificial remedy, and you encourage your own innate healing energy to push back against that stimulus, and then the symptoms go away. So that's how the healing actually is conducted with homeopathy. Now, the nature of remedies, there are a lot of remedies that people can have at home. So say we sell a first aid kit. So all of your colds, fevers, flus, ear infections, gastro, parasites, all of that we cover, at home, and it's completely safe for people to do. But where it can get a bit heavier, say, is when you are offloading a lot of the miasmatic baggage, the generational inheritance. And the only reason you wouldn't put that in a kit for people to take at home is because, the stuff that comes out can be full on. People can be riding waves of grief and healing and, the physical things that can come up when they're doing that. So you'd want to be guided by a homeopath who knows what they're doing. And it can be quite difficult sometimes to figure out for the person in front of you, what remedy do you actually need? What actually is your vibration? So that can take time. Sometimes it takes multiple appointments before you nail it and you go, I know what you need. But, to give people like some ideas of like some of the remedies and what they do, I'll tell you a couple of just really popular ones. So say there's this remedy called nat mur, and it's actually made, the first derivative is actually table salt, and it's made into a homeopathic remedy. So it's that complete energy of that natural element. We know how much salt is in the body. Salt is like a wonderful substance. But the people who are in a nat mur state, they often have a history of a grief, of some sort. And the way that they deal with their grief is they swallow it down but it makes them, it's almost like it hardens their heart a little bit. They become a little bit withdrawn. So these Natmers find it very difficult to have deeply intimate relationships with other people. Like they'll still have friends, but you can see the difference between Natmer friendships where if they're going to cry about something, they're going to do it on their own. They are never going to go to a friend upset and vulnerable and say, oh my gosh, this is like what's going on in my life. They are going to wallow on their own in their room. And you can see it in relationships that Natmers struggle to connect to their emotions. It's very difficult because they flicked that switch long ago when they were enduring some sort of grief, and then it just piles on, piles on. Now, that can end up looking like depression in a lot of people. You know, they've got so much stagnant emotion in there that they just seem a bit depressed and tapped out and not really caring, and things are, you know, difficult. And they might be prone to things like migraines. They often had fluid balance issues in the body, maybe like a bit of edema, stuff like that. Interestingly, you often see that they crave salt in their diet. If you ask a Natmer in homeopathy, we always ask people, what foods do you crave and what do you have an aversion to? What do you not like? And notoriously the Natmers, oh, I love salty chips, stuff like that. And it's because their body, it craves that healing. So, you know, you've got these sorts of pictures. Now, when people read about those remedies, for a lot of people, they can spot it within themselves. When they read it, they're like, oh boy, that's me. That is definitely me. So some you don't always need a homeopath to help, but there are a lot where homeopaths are definitely needed to get to the depths of what's going on.
Do you find that in some presentations with some people, there's just so many factors going on for them that a number of remedies is like the combination of a number of remedies is probably the best recipe?
Yep, definitely. And so that's sort of like more modern homeopathy where we need to take a layered approach because people have got a lot of, and sometimes it's toxic things that we need to detox, whether it was a medical intervention. You know, when we use hardcore pharmaceuticals, it actually can put a layer on the human body and suppress the vital force, whether it's antibiotics, steroids, sometimes shots, stuff like that. And so we need to clear that toxicity so that the organism can thrive. So, you know, you clear those things, you clear the generational things, and then sometimes then you get to see more of the person in front of you to actually give them an individualized remedy. Sometimes you got to chip off the layers so you can even see what you're trying to treat.
Really fascinating stuff. So with the remedies, you've started a couple of businesses now. So Remedy as in RMDY, you've got Remedy Collective, you've got the Remedy Ranch and the Remedy School.
Yeah, so that sort of all ties into the Remedy Ranch. And I guess the idea is that we need to create an alternative system, you know, sort of in the world right now. We are very disconnected. Like you said earlier, I completely believe that we need more of a community like based thing in each suburb. We need to look after each other a lot more. We need to be growing food and watching our children thrive. You know, at the moment in the world, we're all doing it on our own, you know, often in isolation, unless you're one of the lucky ones who have an amazing village, which praise God I do, but that's not the norm for most people. And we need to make that the norm again, because the human body and the human mind can only sustain so much stress. And unfortunately, the world that we currently find ourselves in, it is pushing people to the absolute limit, and they're surviving. A lot of people are surviving, not thriving. And the thing is, if we raise the standard of, you know, health and the standard of happiness for everyone, we actually all benefit, because we actually all get to live in this gorgeous world. A lot of people, you know, from that more mindset that they've been conditioned to, they think that you know, well, if everyone's thriving, like someone's going to miss out. And it just doesn't work that way. We work by cooperation and community. So that's the idea of Remedy Ranch. So we purchased a big block of land, and we've got multiple different things going on that land, but all around community and growth and health and all of that. Then Remedy Collective is all of our products We've got a healing center, a homeopathic center for healing being built with Remedy Collective right now in Brisbane, which we just can't wait to see the general public coming in and getting healed with homeopathy. Just a low-cost clinic, come in, get healed and go. And I just know that that is going to be such a successful clinic. I mean, it's going to be booked out before we know it, and we'll just have to keep building more and more and more to accommodate the amount of people who want homeopathic treatment. And then the other branch is Remedy Academy, which is, we now train up homeopaths. So we have a 2-year course, and it's the largest intake that the world has ever had of homeopaths. And it's so exciting for us to see our industry on the absolute up and up. I know that homeopathy will be, I think the future of medicine, really a massive part of it. Obviously, I completely respect what modern medicine can do in terms of saving lives in emergency trauma, or in cases where intervention is just critical, in that it's like you love it. It's so fascinating in the surgeries that they can do. We all are grateful for those advancements and love and support that. But what we have right now with the treatment of asthma and eczema and hay fever and allergies, anxiety, depression, they are not getting to the root of the issue like homeopathy can. We want to actually heal, whereas they unfortunately are just toxically band-aiding people, and people have had enough. So this is why, they are just seeking the alternatives, which is going to work out really well for all of us. So Remedy Academy has been, for me, the biggest joy to be a part of. I step back from private practice, but I still get to see all of the cases that these students are taking and to witness what they are able to do, even though they're still studying. It's phenomenal. People go to a psychologist for 20 years, weekly appointments, trying to get to the root of their issues. And these students, they give one remedy and it brings it all up, and then it's transmuted out and the person says, oh my God, I'm free. It's the most phenomenal thing to watch. So yeah, that's the essence of what we're doing.
Wonderful. Even the audacity in the best way that you have to take a stand and lead the charge on this is so commendable, because I hope that this inspires a lot of others to fall behind you as well and open up more clinics. And like you said, there's so many students that are now embracing it, and hopefully the equilibrium will be restored, or if not rebalanced.
Sure.
Because you don't know this, but last year I actually took one of your remedies, and it was the one for her. And I'd heard you talking about it, and I felt really drawn to taking it. And it was something that I knew, like, you didn't necessarily have to go to a homeopath to take it. And I have had a thyroid issue. It's just on that cusp. And so I'd had this for about 6 years. And my doctor, for fertility reasons, was like, you've got 3 strikes. This was last year, 3 strikes and you're out. If your 3 blood tests come back and they're at a particular level, I'm going to send you to an endocrinologist and you'll have to be medicated. There's no part of me that wants to dip into medications. It's just not for me unless it's absolutely, there's no other choice. And I tried lifestyle things and nothing seemed to work. And then I would say it was probably around October, November, and I purchased that remedy, and I'd had 2 blood tests that year and they were not at the level that they needed to be. And I took that intuitively. I took it for a few weeks only, 1 drop a week. So 2 drops a week, I think it was. And so it was literally like 3 times that I took that. I was also trying to sleep a lot more because I wasn't sleeping long enough. And I had a thyroid function test a few weeks later. And for the first time ever, it was like normal, completely. And I just thought, and this might not even be a remedy that necessarily targets the thyroid. I'm sure they all have like some, it's intertwined. I'm sure there's probably others that would have probably helped me even more. But the fact that it had been like 6 years of testing, that I'd known that this had been like an issue I'd been trying to get under control.
And did you notice any physical changes, like with your menstrual cycles? Did you see anything shift with that?
No, I had quite a healthy, even around, ovulation
Ovulation,
and,
you were already good.
it was already fine.
So
So
I'll
yeah,
tell you something funny.
please.
Do you know what the remedy is that's very well indicated? So if someone gives carcinosin and it doesn't hit the spot, even though it's well indicated, the next remedy that you give is folliculinum, which is for her. And
Yeah.
so you've taken the remedy that is very similar to
Interesting.
potentially what would have been if you have that presentation. So not surprising, because carcinosin, the thyroid,
Mm.
folliculinum, it is all part of that endocrine, system.
Yeah.
So yeah, definitely. It's cool that you
Interesting.
intuitively just like knew. And it's crazy that you can only take those couple of drops. It's
Literally.
mind bending, isn't it?
Yes.
It's, for other people, you've had perfect cycles, so it didn't make a difference. But for a lot of people, they have had irregular cycles or painful cycles or all sorts of mishaps with their menstrual cycles. 2 drops a week
Yep.
under the tongue, and they are like, oh
Yep.
my gosh. So it's
Yep.
vibration is outrageous. Yeah.
Isn't it? It's I'd been on the contraceptive pill for 14 years, and I'd come off it when they realized that cortisol was actually being the estrogen was binding to the cortisol. So there was this natural reset. But I'll tell you what, not being on that contraceptive pill and really leaning into acupuncture and taking the remedy, the feeling that my body has when you're healing it from the inside and you're restoring that energy is just, I can only describe it as the feeling as being clean. I feel cleaner, which is such an interesting concept.
Feeling. Yeah.
Mm,
And a lot of people, they've been on the pill so long, they don't realize until they go off it. And this happened for me. And it's like, oh my gosh, the world seemed brighter. Music sounded better. Food tastes better. I thought, what, like it was just a very low level though, but a slight dullness over my life that I didn't realize until I was, not on it. So everyone has different experiences with these sorts of things. But yeah, it is absolutely fascinating.
I mean, I got divorced after I came off mine, so that
Yes.
was
And it is, you would have
so
seen all the
interesting.
studies around
Yeah.
what you are attracted to when you're on it
Yes.
versus not.
Exactly. Yeah, it's fascinating stuff. Oh, incredible. So people can come to you to the Remedy Ranch in the future when it's open. Is that open to the general public, or how will that operate?
So we've got construction going on
Mhm.
starting next year. So that's going to be, we're building 8 cabins there. So it's going to be almost health retreaty /
Beautiful.
farm stay ish. So we have a lot of community events that will be there as well. So yeah, we're there. Mainly probably the Brisbane clinic is where I would go though, for people who
Mhm.
want to come in and like see the team. We've got so many students who are so excited to be working there. So yeah, they're the 2 places.
And when will the one in Brisbane be opening?
That opens in less than a year. So they're still
How
building.
exciting.
Yeah, they're building
Wow.
right now. So we'll see, what construction's like, but it should be less than a year.
I'd love to ask you around some advice for the women that are listening that just feel like they're just really stuck at the moment. They're feeling this sense of stuckness. They feel like their current reality just isn't the reality they believe that they should be living. What is the first thing that you recommend that they do?
I think the first thing should be get really clear on exactly what you want. I think some people have never thought they know all about the life they're living, what they don't want. They've never let themselves dream about what would actually fulfill them and make them so happy. And that the very first thing would be write down, what does your dream life look and feel like? I would let it be that. And like, don't hold back. Like, think, what would really fulfill me? Don't write crap on that list because you think, like, oh, yeah, nice car. Everyone wants a nice car.
Yes.
It's not that. Write the stuff that would really make your soul sing, and then sort of watch. And I think the path, once you decide what you want, the path starts to make itself clear for you. And I do think there is a lot to be said for taking the step even when the path is not clear. And probably for you and definitely for me, I've seen that in my life many times. I have leapt before knowing, how I was going to land. And I think God rewards people taking those sorts of leaps, and
I
in the
agree.
best way, things just make their way to us. So that would be my advice.
Beautiful. Thank you. Well, you've got a million and one things going on. I know you've got a trip coming up. You're opening the most incredible spaces for people to come and heal. What else should we be keeping our eye out for?
I guess the community events would be a very fun thing, I guess, for anyone in Australia. We actually have people fly from all over Australia to come to these, to be a part of this community that where we honor health. A lot of people have their alternative minds and they just want to be around like-minded people. So on Instagram is probably where I put out the most work. That's where I talk about healing the most. And people tend to get a lot of healing just from those videos because they understand themselves better. They understand what healing looks like and all of that sort of stuff. So I'd say keep an eye on Instagram. Anything important, I always put it there. But that would be what I'd do.
Beautiful. You're very, very giving with the information on your Instagram. So I highly recommend that if people aren't following you yet, that they absolutely do so, because you share a lot of wisdom to
I
your
love it.
audience. So yeah, that's wonderful.
Thank
And
you.
so anywhere else online that people can find you. So we're at That
Yeah.
Homeopath I'll link it in the show notes below.
Yeah.
Anywhere else that people can find you.
So www.remedycollective.com, and then we've got remedyacademy.com as well. So those are where we've got all of our information listed online, all our products and everything.
Beautiful. Wonderful. Thank you so much for being so giving with your time and your knowledge. We really appreciate it. And I look forward to hopefully catching up with you soon.
Thank you so much. I have so loved chatting and seeing you.
Yeah, likewise. Thanks, Mel.
Thank you.
I hope you loved the conversation with Melissa. Isn't she just so interesting? And homeopathy, what an intriguing modality. And I'm really glad to hear that it is growing in popularity. Now, excitingly, Melissa and her team have extended an offer to listeners of this podcast. If you would like to purchase any of the remedies or the first aid kit, which is incredible, from her website and some of the courses, you will be able to receive a 10% discount if you enter the word aligned. Put it on the screen, aligned, ALIGNED, at checkout, and you will receive a 10% discount. All right, my friends, I look forward to seeing you in the next episode of Not So Status Quo.